The sun sat high over the rolling plains of the Calder Ranch, turning the endless sea of grass into waves of gold. Celine Calder reined her horse to a stop near the eastern fence line, lifting a gloved hand to shield her eyes. From here, she could see nearly all of her father's land, thousands of acres stretching toward the horizon, dotted with cattle that bore the Calder brand. It was all hers, someday. And yet, most days, it felt like a gilded cage. At 22, Celine was expected to behave like the daughter of the wealthiest cattle baron in 3 counties. She wore fine riding clothes, attended polite dinners, and smiled for visiting businessmen who spoke more to her dowry than to her. But her heart belonged to the land, to the dust on her boots and the wind that tugged loose strands of her dark hair free from its braid. A sudden shout carried across the pasture. Celine turned her horse toward the sound and spotted movement near the main gate. A small group had gathered: her father, 2 ranch hands, and a stranger seated tall in the saddle. Curiosity sparked. Visitors were rare these days, especially with rumors of rustlers creeping closer to Calder territory. She nudged her horse forward, arriving just as her father's deep voice cut through the air. "You understand the risk," Henry Calder said, arms crossed over his broad chest. "Rustlers don't scare easy." The stranger nodded once. "I'm not easily scared either." Celine studied him openly. He wasn't dressed like the polished men her father usually dealt with. His hat was worn, but well cared for, his boots dusty, his posture calm, but alert like a man who had learned long ago to expect trouble. His face was rugged, marked by sun and silence, with dark eyes that missed very little. "And your name?" Henry asked. "Marcus Hale." The name sounded plain, but something about the way he said it, steady, unassuming, made it linger. Celine's horse shifted, and Marcus's gaze flicked toward her. For just a moment, their eyes met. His expression didn't change, but Celine felt an unexpected flutter in her chest, like she'd been caught doing something improper. She lifted her chin, refusing to look away first. "This is my daughter, Celine," Henry said. "She manages the house and more of this ranch than most folks realize." Marcus tipped his hat slightly. "Ma'am." No exaggerated politeness, no flirtation, just respect. Celine inclined her head. "Mr. Hale," her father continued, "we've had cattle go missing. Tracks along the South Ridge. I need someone quiet. Someone who won't stir trouble unless it's necessary." "That's my way," Marcus replied. Henry studied him for a long moment before nodding. "You'll start today. Bunkhouse is there. Pays fair." "Fair's enough." As Marcus dismounted, Celine noticed how the ranch hands watched him measuring, curious, unsure. Outsiders were rarely welcomed easily here, especially ones trusted with protection. Later that evening, as shadows stretched long and the air cooled, Celine stood on the porch of the main house, watching Marcus walk toward the bunkhouse. He moved with a deliberate ease, like the land already belonged to him in some quiet way. She didn't know why she was watching, only that something had shifted the moment he rode through the gate. Marcus paused, glancing back toward the house, as if he sensed her gaze. Their eyes met again across the growing dusk. Celine's heart skipped. She told herself it was nothing. Just a hired cowboy. Just another passing presence on her father's land. But deep down, she felt it. This stranger would change everything. Marcus Hale rose before dawn, the sky still bruised purple as stars faded one by one. The Calder ranch was quiet at this hour, but not asleep. Somewhere a horse snorted, leather creaked, and the low murmur of cattle drifted on the cool air. Marcus pulled on his hat and stepped outside the bunkhouse, breathing in the smell of earth and sage. He liked places like this, wide, honest, demanding. Land didn't care where a man came from, only how he treated it. By the time the sun crested the horizon, Marcus was already riding the southern ridge, following tracks Henry Calder had pointed out the night before. Hoofprints cut sharp into the dry soil, too many, too organized to be strays. Rustlers, all right. Careless ones, but bold. He dismounted to study the ground when he heard another horse approaching. "You don't waste time, do you?" Marcus straightened and turned. Celine Calder rode toward him, her posture confident, her horse steady beneath her. Morning light caught in her dark hair, loose now around her shoulders. She wore simple riding clothes, but even dust couldn't disguise the privilege she'd grown up with. "Figured daylight was best for reading tracks," Marcus said. She smiled faintly. "That's what my father says, though he usually sends others to do the dirty work." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "And yet, here you are." "I like to know what's happening on my land," she replied easily, then corrected herself. "On our land." Marcus knelt again, brushing his fingers along the prints. "They're scouting. Haven't taken much yet. Testing how quick the response is." Celine slid from her saddle and crouched beside him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. "Can you stop them?" Marcus met her gaze. "I can slow them, maybe scare them off. Rustlers like easy targets. This ranch won't be one." She studied his face, as if weighing his words. "You sound very sure." "I've seen what happens when folks underestimate men who think they deserve what isn't theirs." Something in his tone made her pause. "You speak like you've been on both sides of that line." Marcus stiffened, almost imperceptibly. "Lines aren't always as clear as people like to believe." The silence stretched. Celine stood, brushing dust from her gloves. "My father doesn't like mysteries." "Then it's a good thing I was hired to protect cattle, not share my life story." She laughed softly, not offended, but intrigued. "Fair enough." As they rode back toward the ranch, they passed a group of hands mending fence. The men tipped their hats to Celine, respectful, familiar. When their eyes shifted to Marcus, the warmth cooled. One man muttered something under his breath. Celine noticed. "They'll come around." "Maybe," Marcus said. "Maybe not." She frowned. "You saved my father time and money already. That should count for something." "It doesn't always," he replied quietly. At lunch, Marcus ate with the hands, keeping mostly to himself. The talk was cautious, clipped. When Celine appeared in the doorway with a basket, the room stilled. "I thought you might want something better than beans," she said, setting the basket down near Marcus. A few men exchanged looks. "That's not necessary, Miss Calder," Marcus said. "I know," she replied. "I wanted to." Their fingers brushed as he took the basket. A small thing, but the air shifted again, charged and visible to everyone watching. That evening, Henry Calder pulled Marcus aside. "You keep your distance from my daughter." Marcus met his gaze evenly. "I haven't crossed any line." Henry's jaw tightened. "Make sure you don't. Folks will talk." "They already are," Marcus said. Henry snorted. "That's not your concern." But it was. Later, as dusk settled over the plains, Celine stood alone by the corral. Marcus approached, unsure if he should turn back. "You didn't need to bring food," he said. "I know." She looked at him steadily. "But I don't like watching people draw lines in the dust and pretend they're laws of nature." "Do they?" she asked softly. The question hung between them, unanswered, as the sun slipped below the horizon. And for the first time in a long while, Marcus wondered what it might cost him to cross that line, and whether it would be worth it. The trouble came 3 nights later. Marcus was on patrol along the south ridge, moonlight silvering the grass and throwing long shadows across the land. The ranch was quiet, in that uneasy way that set a man's nerves on edge. His horse shifted beneath him, ears flicking forward, sensing what Marcus already knew. They weren't alone. A faint clatter of hooves drifted on the wind, too careful to be accidental. Marcus dismounted, tying his horse low behind a cluster of mesquite, and moved on foot toward the sound. He crouched, heart steady, hand resting near his rifle. 2 men emerged from the darkness, leading cattle toward the ravine. "Now, Marcus," whispered to himself. He stepped out just enough for the moon to catch his silhouette. "That's far enough." The rustlers spun, curses flying. One raised his rifle, but Marcus fired first to the dirt at the man's feet. The crack echoed across the plains. "You can walk away," Marcus called. "Or you can be carried." They hesitated, then bolted, leaving the cattle behind. Marcus watched until the night swallowed them whole, memorizing their shapes, their movements. They'd be back. Men like that always were. By morning, the ranch buzzed with talk. Marcus's warning shot had been heard clear to the house. Celine found him near the barn, anger and relief warring in her eyes. "You could have been killed." "I wasn't," he replied. "That's not the point." Marcus wiped sweat from his brow. "It's exactly the point. This is what your father hired me to do." She crossed her arms. "You should have had backup." "I didn't have time." Her voice softened. "You didn't think to send word." "I didn't want to risk them taking cattle while we waited." Celine searched his face. "You don't act like a man trying to prove himself." "No," Marcus said. "I act like a man trying to prevent worse." Word spread fast, and with it came judgment. Some hands praised Marcus quietly. Others eyed him with suspicion. By evening, Henry Calder called him into the study. "You disobeyed protocol," Henry said. "I followed instinct." Henry leaned forward. "Instinct gets men killed, and hesitation gets cattle stolen." Marcus shot back. Silence followed. Finally, Henry exhaled. "You did your job. But don't make a habit of acting alone." Marcus nodded. "Understood." Outside, Celine waited. "You always push back like that." "Only when it matters." She smiled, despite herself. "You scare my father." "That wasn't the plan." They walked together along the fence line, the air heavy with unsaid things. "People are talking," Celine said quietly. "They say you're reckless, that you don't know your place." Marcus stopped walking. "And what do you think?" She met his gaze, without flinching. "I think you're brave. And lonely." The words struck deeper than he expected. "You don't know me," he said. "No," she admitted. "But I see how you watch the horizon, like you're waiting for something to catch up to you." Marcus looked away. "Some things do." A gust of wind swept across the plains, carrying the scent of rain. Thunder rumbled in the distance. That night, the storm broke hard and fast. Rain lashed the land, and lightning split the sky. A fence gave way near the creek, and cattle scattered. Without hesitation, Marcus rode out. Celine followed. He found her struggling with a gate, rain soaking her clothes. "You shouldn't be out here, and you shouldn't be alone." They worked side by side, mud slick underfoot, voices nearly lost in the storm. When a tree limb fell nearby, Marcus pulled her close, shielding her instinctively. For a moment, the world narrowed to the heat between them and the rain pounding down. Their faces were inches apart. This time, neither looked away. But before anything could be said, Donna's shout rang out. Help had arrived. The moment passed. Later, standing under the porch as the storm faded, Celine spoke softly. "One day, people will stop trying to decide who you are." Marcus looked at her, rainwater dripping from his hat. "I don't need them to." "But you do care what I think," she said. He didn't answer. He didn't need to. The truth was already written in the space between them, fragile, dangerous, and impossible to ignore. The rustlers came at dawn. Marcus sensed it before the alarm was raised. The unnatural stillness, the way the birds fled the trees in a sudden rush. He was already mounted when the first gunshot cracked through the air. They hit fast and hard, sweeping in from the south with practiced precision. 3 men, maybe 4, driving cattle toward the ravine. But this time, they weren't testing. This time, they meant to take blood if they had to. Marcus rode straight at them. "Split up," he shouted to the hands racing from the bunkhouse. Gunfire erupted. Horses screamed. Dust clouded the air. Marcus focused on the leader, a stocky man with a scar cutting through his beard. He fired a warning shot, but the man laughed and spurred his horse faster. From the ridge above, Celine watched in horror. She'd come out at the sound of the shots, her heart pounding as chaos unfolded below. Her father shouted orders, but fear clawed at her chest when she saw Marcus veer dangerously close to the ravine. "Marcus," she cried, though her voice was lost in the noise. A shot rang out. Marcus's horse stumbled, grazing his leg on jagged rock. He fought to stay upright, firing again. One rustler fell, tumbling into the brush. The others scattered, retreating under the hail of resistance. When it was over, the land fell silent, except for heavy breathing and the low moans of injured cattle. Celine ran to Marcus before anyone could stop her. "You're hurt," she said, gripping his arm. "Just a scrape," he replied, though his face was pale. Henry arrived moments later, eyes hard. "You disobeyed orders again." Marcus straightened. "I stopped them." "Yes," Henry snapped. "But you nearly got yourself killed." Celine stepped between them. "If he hadn't, we would have lost half the herd." Henry stared at his daughter, surprised by the fire in her voice. "This isn't your place," he said quietly. "It is if it's my heart you're talking about," she shot back. The words fell heavy. Marcus froze. "Celine," Henry's face darkened. "You forget who you are." "I know exactly who I am," she said. "And I know what I feel." Henry turned his gaze on Marcus. "And you? Do you think you belong here? Do you think you can offer her the life she deserves?" Marcus swallowed. "No, sir, I don't." The admission hurt more than any bullet. "Then leave," Henry said, "before this becomes something neither of you can undo." That night, Marcus packed his things. Every instinct told him to go without a word. That was his way. But as he stepped into the moonlight, Celine waited near the corral. "You're really leaving," she said. "I don't have a choice." "You always have a choice." Marcus shook his head. "Not when I'm standing between you and everything you've been raised for." She stepped closer. "I don't care about class or expectations." "I do," he said softly, "because I care about you." Her eyes filled with tears. She refused to let fall. "So this is it. For now," he said. "Some lines can't be crossed without a price." She reached for his hand, squeezing it tightly. "Then I'll pay it." Marcus pulled his hand away gently. "You shouldn't have to." He mounted his horse and rode out before she could say another word. From the porch, Henry watched his daughter crumble, guilt flickering behind his stern expression, as Marcus disappeared into the darkness. The ranch stood quieter than it ever had, safe from rustlers, but fractured by something far more dangerous: love. Weeks passed, and the Calder ranch returned to its familiar rhythm. The cattle grazed undisturbed. The fences stood strong. The rustlers never returned, but Celine Calder felt the absence of Marcus Hale in every quiet moment. She moved through her days with practiced grace, overseeing accounts, riding the perimeter, hosting polite dinners for neighboring ranchers, but her laughter no longer came easily. At night, she stood at her window, staring toward the southern ridge, wondering where the man who had changed her heart had gone. Henry Calder noticed. He pretended not to, yet each morning he walked the land Marcus had protected, replaying the echoes of gunfire, the calm resolve in the cowboy's eyes, and the way his daughter had stood between them without fear. Henry had built his empire by crossing lines others were too afraid to step over. Had he forgotten that? One afternoon, a ranch hand galloped in hard from the west. "Mr. Calder, there's trouble near the river bend, strangers driving cattle that ain't theirs." Henry didn't hesitate. "Saddle up." Celine was already moving. They reached the bend to find chaos, shouting men, scattered cattle, and at the center of it all, a familiar figure, standing firm with rifle lowered, but ready. Marcus. He turned at the sound of hooves, surprise flashing across his face before settling into something warmer. "Couldn't stay away," he said. Henry rode forward, studying him. "You followed the rustlers." "They were headed back here," Marcus replied. "I wasn't about to let that happen." The standoff was brief. Outnumbered and exposed, the rustlers fled, disappearing into the hills for good. When the dust settled, Henry dismounted and approached Marcus slowly. "You didn't have to come back." "No," Marcus said. "But I wanted to." Henry nodded. "Once I misjudged you. A man who protects what isn't his. That's a rare thing." Celine's breath caught. Henry continued, voice firm but honest. "I built this ranch with nothing but grit and risk. I won't deny my daughter the same chance at happiness." He extended his hand. Marcus took it, stunned. Celine ran to him, then laughter and tears, breaking free at once. Marcus pulled her into his arms, no hesitation left between them. The land seemed to breathe again. In time, Marcus stayed not as a hired hand, but as a partner. He and Celine worked the ranch side by side, proving to everyone watching that love didn't care about titles or wealth. It cared about loyalty, courage, and the willingness to stand your ground. At sunset, they often rode the southern ridge together, where it had all begun to hearts, no longer divided by dust or doubt. And on the Calder Ranch, a new legacy took root, one built not just on land and cattle, but on love strong enough to cross any line. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more Western stories.